Let's turn the sphere into a pearl. And here are some reference photos. I have the black pearl with green reflections in front and gradually turning purple as they approach the sides. Here's another example. This is less extreme, but you can still see the color transitions. So this is gonna be a bit tricky, but I'm gonna show you how to do that. And also the white pearl. This one has some sort of pink, green reflections in random patterns. And that's because in real life the pearls are made from many layers with different reflections and so on. And this gives it the 3D look you see in this photo. We're going to try and create something similar by using Vray. So let's start with this white pearl. So the first step is determining the diffuse color. And I think we can use something like dark beige or beige, like here. So let's do that. Let's create a new Vray material and set up a beige diffuse color. I think that's pretty close. Drag and drop render. And maybe a bit too saturated. I'm just gonna desaturate it a little bit. Let's see how that looks. I think that's better. Okay, so that's the base, the diffuse color. Now we need to add some colorful reflections. So when using colorful reflections, for example, I'm going to show you with pure red, you're going to notice that the rest of the object turns sort of blue-green. And that's the effect of the color preservation mode. And it can be a bit difficult to predict accurately what the final result is going to look with colored reflections and lighter diffuse colors. So what you want to do is you want to go down to the Options tab and you want to change the energy preservation mode to monochrome. And as you do that, you're going to see that the whole thing turns red. And it's going to be much easier to control the final result with the monochrome mode. Okay, so set that to mono. And we're going to set up a noise map in the reflect slot. Okay, noise, here we go. And this is how it looks right now. And I think it's a bit too even, too perfect, and doesn't look too natural. So let's change it to fractal. And this is going to give us multiple levels of noise. Let's look at our reference. Okay. And set up the colors like this. Let's make them pretty bright. And the first color is going to be pink. And the second color is going to be a bit green. Like this. Okay. Let's render and see how it looks. I think the noise size might be too large. Let's try to reduce it to maybe 3. And you can start to see some colors in there. Okay, so that's a good start. And now we're going to enable the Fresnel reflections. Maybe let's try them at 4 for now. And blur the reflections by reducing the glossiness to match the reference. Actually, I'm going to blur them even more to make sure my reflections are nice and large. So this is going to be something like not the uppermost layer with these nice bright reflections, but something a bit lower where the color is coming from and it's quite blurred. Okay, maybe let's increase the Fresnel much more to get this reflective look. Alright, looking good. Maybe let's increase the saturation a bit just to make the effect stronger. And you can see some pinks and greens in a random pattern on our pearl. But the reflections are much more blurry than over here. So how do we fix that? Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change my material to Vray blend material. We're going to add another layer. So copy this material to the code material slot, and this is going to be our second layer. And for the second layer, I'm going to use much higher reflection glossiness, lower Fresnel, maybe 4, and I'm going to get rid of the noise map and just use a regular light gray color. And once you render, we're going to see some nicer looking crisp reflections and a weak colored reflection layer below it. Okay, our reference actually has stronger colors in the reflections. So we can try to simulate that by increasing the saturation of our reflect colors. But I actually prefer colors not so strong. Maybe let's make it a bit colder. And a nice result. And the final step we need to do is add some bump. And to add some bump, first we're gonna add some bump to this lower layer. And I'm gonna use a fractal noise map. Maybe a bit larger size, maybe 10. Okay, I'm gonna bump up the levels to add some finer detail. Okay, looks better. And now we're gonna add a bump map to the code material as well. So go in your code material, move down to maps, bump, and set up a noise map here. Right, I'm gonna make the bump for this code layer much weaker. Let's start at 5. And let's use a fractal noise map. Maybe set the size to 15. See how that looks. Let's try smaller. Let's try 5. Okay, looks pretty good. And maybe let's reduce it to 2. Okay, and I think the result looks pretty much like a pearl. Pretty nice. So this material is going to be white pearl. And let's make another material for the black pearl. Okay, so the diffuse color is pretty dark, almost black. Let's start with a regular Vray material and set up a dark diffuse color, almost black. And now the reflections. So we have this weird color transition from green in front to purple on the sides. We can do that by using a fall off map. Okay, So the first color is gonna be green, sort of bluish green. And the second color is gonna be dark purple. I mean darker. Okay. And we're gonna disable the RGB color preservation mode and change that to monochrome. Okay, and see how it looks. All right. So first of all, it's much too reflective, so let's enable Fresnel. Let's try it at 4. And second of all, and the transition is not exactly as we want it to be. So you're gonna play with the curves over here. Okay, so let's bring that purple closer, like this. Okay, that's better. And the purple is much too colorful, much too saturated. Let's make it darker, like this, and see how that looks. Okay. And let's try to bring it even closer. Okay, that's good. Let's blur the reflections a bit. Alright, looks like the reflections are pretty sharp. You can see the camera here, the guy photographing the pearl. So the reflections are pretty sharp. But at the same time, it looks like there are large shiny areas, and this again is because of the multi-layer effect. So to do that, for this first layer, we're gonna blur the reflections to maybe 0.6 or so. Okay, that looks good. Maybe let's make them a bit stronger. I'm just gonna bump up the Fresnel value. All right. And we're gonna add a second layer, just like we did before. Paste copy. For this one, I'm just gonna simply bring up the reflection glossiness to maybe 0.95 and re-render. Okay, first let's reduce the Fresnel to 4. And that's much better. Okay, so this pearl is pretty smooth, but we can still add some bump to it, just to make it a bit less perfect. It always looks better with a little bit of bump. So just a noise map, set it to fractal, reduce the size, let's try 3. And let's set the bump amount to 2. Okay, let's try even smaller. Let's try 1 and see how that looks. Okay, that's better. Maybe let's add a slight bump to the base as well. Okay, and let's try it at 10. And make it pretty weak. We don't want the effect to be too strong. And it actually looks like we're pretty close. Maybe let's make this purple a bit darker. Okay, and that's the black pearl material. Okay, good. So you can see how you can use the monochrome energy preservation mode to control the color reflections better, and how you can use Vray blend material to set up more than one layer with different reflections and shininess.